good afternoon, and welcome to another compliance catch-up. Today, I am being joined by a hugely experienced individual in the retail space. Paul has been working for over 30 years with networks, with retail, with IFAs, pension providers, credit providers. And we will be focusing our discussion around retail networks, how people choose them, and how the business model works within that. So I'd like to welcome Paul.
Good afternoon.
There he is. Hello, Paul.
Thank you, James.
I'd tell everybody a little bit about yourself, because it's a massively impressive journey that you've been on.
Thanks for that. Such a elevating introduction. Like you said, been in the industry for 30 plus years, been an advisor myself, wealth advisor, pension advisor, mortgage and protection. Always been around the intermediated space, primarily mortgages, protection, wealth, and worked very closely with networks, was part of a senior team that set up a network just after Mortgage Day back in 2004. And the business that I run now is helping intermediaries, primarily in the areas that I've just mentioned, find the right proposition that suits their requirements, be it going DA, be it finding a principal, being it finding a regulatory host or a standard network.
DA is directly authorised in this?
Directly authorised, yes, sorry.
Of course. And in terms of people come to you and say, Paul, I've got no clue. What do I do? How do you find out what's best for them?
The very first step I always say is you look at your current contract wherever you are. It's normally an advisor, it's someone in the retail space working within a multi-advisor practice, and they're looking to set up on their own. And it's looking at the contract, understanding what the exit is going to look like for them. Often people don't look at the contract they signed, or can't remember the contract that they signed 3, 5, 7, 10 years ago. But you've got to understand what that looks like before you take the next step. But then it's just understanding your own capabilities, your aptitude, what it is that you're looking to achieve long term, what you need in the shorter term, what you need support. And I do a deep dive. I ask questions. I just get a background check, and I just have a probe to find out more about their business, what business mix they have, where they want to go, do they want to grow, etc. So just try and get a whole journey from them, help them position their own business plan going forward. And from the other side, in looking at the propositions that are available, I do a deep delve on proposition. I look at financials. I subscribe to something. It's not perfect, but it's better than looking at accounts, which, let's face it, can be 2 years old. But with subscribing to some of the products that are available, you get a more up-to-date look at that. But it's just looking at the culture, the ethos, looking at the current user experience, a whole number of things. And if there are any red flags, I'll do a bit more digging. But if there's too many red flags, I just hold off and I don't pass anybody that way. And that's the principle of it. If that covers it for you.
And are you seeing mainly individuals wanting to take the jump out of a franchise, or is it typically a group of people that have got together and said, we can do a better job?
It's every week's different. Every week is different. I would say the sweet spot really is 1, 2 or 3 advisors stepping out of a multi-advisor operation to set up on their own, wanting to have their own branding and build something for themselves and live into their values and achieving their goals rather than working towards someone else's. And that's the main. But what encouragingly, this has got a lot of column inches in the industry press about new blood coming into the industry. Interestingly, I'm getting a lot of experience wanting to take that first step on the ladder. There are some people that have been sold a dream and are completely naive as to what that journey looks like, but there are people that are really ready to take that step. And just an example, yesterday, a guy, he's been a paraplanner for 3 years, he's been around the industry for a long time, knows the advice process, has got access to client can build something. And you're like, well, why not? And it's having those, it's stepping into the right academy or the right process to get the competent advisor status and start the journey for themselves, because it can be daunting.
Absolutely. And how much do they realize the compliance and operational framework that they actually need to work in? Because I guess it's hidden from them to a greater or lesser extent.
Yeah, it is. What you tend to find is the guys that are working in a DA practice want to automatically go to DA, and we're just taking that right back to basics when you're talking about the regulatory framework and responsibilities. You look at they're unaware of the threshold conditions that is needed to be met just to go DA. And then when you start talking about MLRO, money laundering regulatory officers, and TNC schemes, training and competency schemes, etc., and you're building it up, and all of a sudden there is a realization, and the next logical step, and you and I have talked about this a couple of times, would be a regulatory host or a principal being a network to take that journey yourself and learn the reporting and the responsibilities within that framework to grow the business.
And almost use that as a stepping stone to the full authorization.
Well, yeah. I mean, some
not. I don't know.
Some yes and some no. And the thing is about the whole DA-AR argument, everyone can make an argument either way. Networks are a valuable, and I believe necessary, institutions and service providers within the industry is needed. And again, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a stepping stone to go DA. Some people see that way, and some people naturally progress, and that's where they need to go, because that's their journey, and that's how they're made up, and that's where their goals and aspirations lie. But once you get into, if you partner right, a network relationship can be one for life.
And if I were coming out of a franchise, I've got my 3 buddies with me, we want to go DA. In your experience, how long does that take? How much would that cost me to build out all the bits and pieces?
Well, if that was the case, again, it's going back to what are your exit terms? Have you got a business plan? What does it look like? Do you know what you need to achieve? I talk about threshold conditions. They need to understand that there are incidental costs that they may well not have considered. They will.
Yeah, incidental. You mean chuffing enormous costs?
Yes, they need that they do need to take on, and I often, I'm not the compliance specialist, and I will say you need preparation. And what I mean by that is preparation for your application itself, because you need guidance on that. Because if you stick an application in and it's wrong and you get further information out, it will just take longer and longer. And I've spoken to people that have had, the FCA said I've asked them to withdraw because the 12-month time bar on it, you've got to withdraw and start again. But if you get it right the first time, then it will go smoother. So there's preparation on the application itself, preparation on the application process, knowing what to expect, not just a case of have you got a TNC scheme, have you got X, Y, and Z complaints register and all these things. It's the questions that they will be asked are, do you understand them? Tell us about them. What needs to be done, etc. So they need to understand that application process itself, and then application of the real world once you get there. And as you said, this comes with costs and PI, and you do need. I always recommend someone taking that step, even if you've got someone who wants to take on the compliance responsibility, or you take on a full-time employee as the compliance. It's always better to get outside guidance from a compliance support function to keep you up to speed. It's a safety net. So I talk to them about all these things, and that's what I will go through, and the costs about capital adequacy and cost of PI, and a complaint support function are ideally placed to talk you through those steps and those requirements. And just going back to let's say the sole trader that wants to go DA on his own because that's what he thinks is the right thing to do, or she is the right thing to do. once they've had that conversation, I'll say, look, threshold conditions, etc. Once they've had that conversation, they realise that, okay, I'm not ready for this. And often they come back, and there's people that do really want to. I won't say take umbrage, but I think they're a little bit disappointed in the outcome of that conversation. But I get people coming back 3, 6, 9, 12 months later saying, do you know what? You were right. And this is my journey. Can you help me take the step on that journey?
And do you get the feeling that the FCA isn't necessarily unhappy with that? Because they would, if it were easier, as MiFID II was supposed to make it, suddenly be looking after a whole load of 1- and 2-person bands, which is an utter nightmare to keep consistency.
It would be. And again, you and I have talked about this. The FCA do not want a fragmented retail sector because it is difficult for them and their oversight. So they don't want that. And I you may well have seen this, and I think we may well have talked about it previously. I submitted a freedom of information request to the FCA. It took some time to get through, and they were asking me questions, which was quite strange because they were asking me questions about terminology that they've got on their own website. And I thought, well, why do you want clarification on that? Because I've taken the exact terminology from your website. Anyway, long story short, I requested what the approvals have been for the last 5 years in consumer credit, in wealth, in mortgages and protection. And the outcome was, apart from a spike in 2023 in consumer credit, we're looking at large, broad stroke. The approved applications are 30% of what they were. So 30% of what they were in 2020. So 5 years ago. So we've seen that decline. And I think that is partly to do with threshold conditions. I think it's partly to do with the process itself. I think it may well be the FCA's appetite. But equally, the alternative is then that what does the advisor look at if that is the case? If the FCA are doing a filtration process on who they would want to do that, and the networks have not had a good time either with the AR regime and the deep delve and the further reviews that they're looking at, or the mortgage rules review that's coming up on just one sector I'm picking on there, and guidance and advice in pensions and so on. But that's across the piece. But I do think that the network, the principle of a network or a regulatory host is required in the industry. However, there has been some hiccups with that, and they're not particularly happy with it. They've issued the 166s, 165s, 166s to the networks. They have a deep delve and they want further oversight with the AR regime and so on. And the thing that does, it makes it man hours heavy for the network. It increases costs, etc. But at the end of the day, the FCA's ultimate goal is the consumer, and they want the consumer, and whatever route that is, and it's just making sure that the industry is fit for purpose. And often with these things that come in, it's always, and I do use this analogy a lot, when new regulation comes in, it's almost like a pendulum. It becomes hard one swing one way, and then it kind of finds its way back to a sensible level after some time. And it is down to interpretation. I hope that answered your question, because I went through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the FCA has found itself rather stuck with principals and reg hosts. I don't think they like them. I think they struggle with the concept of regulation for profit, which is effectively what networks and reg hosts are. I think they're slightly more accepting of principals because they're just trying to maximize their business. A principal obviously has compliance to do the principal business, be that mortgages or pensions or whatever.
Yeah.
And the ARs under it just fit into an existing business that's well known by the compliance team and the processes. And so back in the old days where you were registered representatives and all the rest of it, I think that's where the FCA was. And then a whole group of people went, you know what? It would just be cheaper and easier if we didn't actually have to do the investment, selling and the rest of it. And we just got the bits and pieces and rented it out to people that would. And I think the FCA missed that entirely. And then they suddenly woke up and went, oh my God, these people don't know what they're doing because they don't do it. They're not a firm that goes out and has had the rush of customer complaints or the ability to missell something and be taken over the coals for it. They've literally just gone, we've satisfied you for these and we're going to rent it out to people underneath it.
I do think there's a certain element of that and this is the case right across society. Unfortunately, is the few that spoil it for the many. And I wouldn't say I would disagree with to an extent. I do think that it's a case of, we can do this. We need a span of control of one compliance officer to 80 advisors, and you're like, that's the way. It's just not. You can't be doing things like that. But there are networks that have got they are offering value, and have got robust oversight and infrastructure, and that infrastructure does move with advisor numbers that do grow. But I think it's getting the balance right. And I'm an advocate and a believer in the network model, because it allows a distance from the regulator, providing it's done. I'm not just talking about a regulatory umbrella, because all the other little bits and pieces that go in there are important for an advisor to run the business. But then if you're just talking about an out-and-out principle, then you just become an advisor.
Yeah, you
working for someone.
Yeah,
but for someone else. But it's I want my own brand, but I don't want to be. I don't want to do. I need a cushion between me and the regulator, and I need someone to offer me that guidance and so on. That's what the principle of the network is, along with all the other things that do go in there, with economies of scale to help them get the best bang for buck, or negotiating on research tools, etc. So, like I say, I'm an advocate of it, but I do think that as you state, that the regulator thinking as was illustrated by the AR regime, and bringing that in, thinking, well, hang on a minute, the principal doesn't know that what businesses the ARs are doing and where their income's coming from, and so on. So there was a big bit of a deep delve on that. Right? I think again, it's evolution. And you and I have been in the industry a long time, and one thing that we know in this industry is change, and it is continue changing. This is again, a network needs to be looking down the track of what consultation papers they are, and discussion papers that are coming down and getting in readiness for that, but then cascading that down to firm principals and advisors to ensure that they know what's coming. And that's a value-added piece as well. They need to do that, and it should be an expectancy of the advisors themselves and the firms to understand what's coming down the track, so they understand what value they're getting from the umbrella under which they sit.
And I think you make an interesting point about the infrastructure of networks. So I've done a degree of work in the wholesale space, where the average monthly AR principal relationship is in the multiple thousands a month, 3,000 to 6,000, 7,000 a month. And even there, the compliance oversight is maybe one account manager to 5, 10 ARs. So it's not superhumanly good. When you get into retail, I used to do structured products, so I have a little understanding of the IFA marketplace. IFAs don't like spending money on things they see to be irrelevant.
Yeah.
And a lot of the infrastructure overhead of a network to a CF30 salesperson would seem to be irrelevant and over the top, and therefore the lowest cost operator wins. Yeah. And I think that's what the FCA is struggling with right now. Is saying, Paul.
Agreed. Agreed. And again, it's a conversation I have frequently. And as I said earlier on, the space that I operate in to the vast majority of the time is the wealth, retail wealth, investment, pensions, mortgages, and protection. But frequently I have conversations with people saying, "What's the cheapest?" And this is not making a decision based on you for your company on what is the cheapest, that you don't understand the value that's being offered and what the costs implications are for the network. And this is the mutual understanding. It's a partnership that they need to do, and one needs to understand the challenges and day-to-day business activities as an advisor, but the advisor needs to understand the challenges of dealing with the regulator, keeping things on track, protecting the businesses that they're service providers to, and the whole thing. But there has to be a value chain and the understanding of that meshing together. So it has to be a partnership, and a network has got to do. They should be doing a lot of heavy lifting, but it doesn't come free. You've got these full-time employees cost a lot of money. PI costs a lot of money. Research tools cost a lot of money. R&D into future development costs money, and all that business. Well, if I want a long-term business and I want to protect myself, then sorry, mate, but there's going to be a cost that comes to that. And you've got it. And like I say, the conversation I do have is look at your requirements, tell where you want to take your business, what's your longer term goal, and make your decision based on aligning that objectively and subjectively to a certain extent about the values or personalities within that business as to whether that's going to be a match. And can I stay here for the longer term? Because it should be the marriage for the longer term. Fair enough, some people may well want to go DA, and that's a whole other question about exits, exiting the business. But I mean, hopefully that does answer your question as to that. Well, the value chain and what's expected, but it cannot be done purely on cost. And if you are looking at the cheapest, I firmly believe you need to just take a step back and understand where regulation is going and the responsibilities in servicing the consumer.
I think it's telling that the FCA, as part of the last review, have said it's an AR's obligation to undertake correct and vigorous due diligence on the principal reg hosts that they choose to do business with, as well as the reg host network having the contract with the underlying AR. The AR has to do its research and
absolutely, and there is misinformation out there, and unfortunately, as any salesperson does in any industry, if someone's working for a particular regulatory host network, they're going to tell you all the good things about what they do, and they're going to give you the sales spiel and the glossy marketing and I was going to say glossy brochure then, but that kind of shows how long I've been in the industry.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
But you have got to do your own due diligence, and using the services like myself is that I can objectively, but I always say you've got to do your own DD to make sure that what I'm doing is saving you time and telling you what's and all, what's going off with this. Have they grown too quickly? What infrastructure they've got? Well, is there something you don't like? Anything at all. So I don't say, oh, everything's fantastic here. I just say, well, look, this is the strong parts, but you need to be aware of this, and ask the questions and satisfy yourself. And if you need to, go and get a contract lawyer, look over the contract. Don't be afraid to walk away from a contract. Sometimes the contracts are stacked one way. I've done a whole piece on that. But yes, you're right. 100%. They need to do a level of due diligence, and don't just believe the hype.
And I guess one of the advantages from an individual, a small firm's perspective is speed to market. So a DA process with the best will in the world, if you believe the FCA, is 6 months. I don't believe it's ever happened in 6 months. Normally it's 12 to 18 months, plus the regulatory withholdings, plus the fact you need a full compliance build. versus a network that can probably get you on in 30 to 60 days and allow you to be up and running. That's a huge difference in your business model actually meeting the market and being able to get going.
Yes, it is. But this then goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you do 12 months of prep, getting yourself ready, that process to go DA is going to be shorter in the time frame because you've sought guidance, you know what you're doing, you're ready, and if it's right for you, you invest that time and money in doing that, and it will shorten that process. If there's anyone that's watching this, I would certainly say preparation. As I said earlier, prep your app, prep the app process, prep what you're going to do, and it will just make things a lot easier for you. When you talk about from a network perspective, if you are an RI, a registered individual within a principal firm, whether they're an appointed representative themselves or a DA practice, it's easy to go RI to RI. It's quick. I say it's easy. It's quicker. You've got your application, your asset and liability, your CRB check, your criminality check, a credit report, and your references. And your references are generally the ones that take a little bit of time. And that can be, you do your induction, you do your modules online and so on, and you're still going to have to go through the CAS process because everyone's competent advisor status process with every principal that you move to, because they might have got different processes and different systems and requirements and KPIs, etc. So you still have to go through that. But you can be up and running, as you say, 30 to 60 days. But if you're going to move as an AR, so if you want to set up an AR, you've got that process plus the 3 to 6 months that the FCA state it's going to be 90 days to get your application through. So what the regulatory host, the network, does, they get the complete application, as I've just described, with those elements, added to which a long Form A that then goes off to the FCA. But they can't send a long Form A off until they've got everything that they need to satisfy that. And then you start waiting on the regulator to do that. So you're looking at 4 to 5 months. And these are the conversations that I have. But I say, prepare for the longer. If you always prepare for the longer, but the more preparation you put in, the swifter that you get your things together, the smoother journey you're going to have.
And I also feel quite, sorry is probably the wrong word, I feel the pain of the networks because they're sat there with 15, 20, 30 different independent businesses, any one of which on any given day could be selling the wrong product to the wrong person, that the regulatory host is the person responsible in the chain. And that means that one person down there in an AR that you haven't really got a relationship with blows it up for everything else.
Yeah.
So the FCA turns up at your door and says, you're restricted from that product because that's gone wrong in your name. Bang. And I guess the other ARs then go, well, what?
Yeah, guilty by association.
Because, and I think that's I think in the retail space, there's quite a lot of mispriced risk because the market has driven it that way on the networks. I think the networks are too cheap because I don't think the individual ARs realize the risk that they're accepting having a low fee. Because
I think there are a few tens of thousands that would argue against against that. But again, I think this may be down to the regulator to communicate this simplistically to and produce, because when you go onto the FCA website and whatever you're looking for, the handbook, or you're looking at SUP or any policy statements, you can go down a rabbit hole because and it can be so complex. And this is, again, it's frightening for advisors. I've got to go through all this, and this is where the compliance support function comes in and getting that guidance to say, well, this is what you need to be looking at. But I think in simplistic terms, it just needs to be spelled out. So, okay, this is the case. And I think I do think that as I said, it's a value chain. And the understanding has to come from both sides in that in that relationship to mesh together for a long-term relationship. I think once the understanding from the RI or the business principle of the AR, and somehow then, and I'm saying, I'm just listening to myself talk there, and it sounds like I'm kind of indicating that there are loads of people that don't. There are many that do understand that, but it's just a case of let's step away from that cost element and understand what it is, what heavy lifting does need to be done from a principal's perspective, and what the value is in that, and what it's allowing you to do. Concentrate on your business, servicing your clients, while someone else is doing the heavy lifting, and that's going to come at a cost.
And I think the latest AR bits and pieces, the most pernicious rule, if you like, that was put in there that has been missed, quite frankly, by pretty much every network and reg host, is you have to treat your ARs like employees. And an employee of a financially regulated firm, their telephones are all recorded, their devices are all controlled, their emails are all supervised, their WhatsApps are blocked, their handsets are remotely wipeable because data, all of this stuff, right? And it's just one of those, oh yeah, the FCA will just slip it in, treat them like employees. Oh my goodness, that is, to me, that blows up the network model. I'm uncertain how any of the networks can treat any of their ARs like an employee.
No, exactly. No.
The CISC handbook or the COND would demand that they do.
It would, yeah, it would. I think it would blow up the framework, the retail framework, if that was the case. But if indeed that is the case, and again, some of these things are down to interpretation of what is and what should be done. But I get many of these business principles. If they were treated like employees, then it's right. Okay, I'm off to DA, and that's I'm going to do this. There was one example.
Panacea. I mean, DA, you also need to go through the IT pain of not being able to WhatsApp your mates and not be able to use your personal email and all of that good stuff that people try and escape from the large franchises because they think that they're being controlled unnecessarily by corporate. And actually, it's the regulations that are saying, CIS 10A says you can't. CIS 9.1 says we have to do it. CIS 4.6 says you have to have business continuity. You've got it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, well, I think there's got to be a happy medium. Like I say, I'm, as I've said several times, a massive advocate of the network model, but it's got to be fit for purpose. It's got to add value, and it fits well with what the FCA are trying to achieve if it's administered and delivered in the right way. But there's one example that you said there. There was one network, it's going to remain nameless, that took they needed to know where the income was coming from for all their ARs and advisors. So they said, we need open banking on everybody. Now, if you're an employee, would you like your employer having open banking access to your personal bank account? I wouldn't, as an employee of somebody. So as a business principal and my network saying I want open banking on your personal account, can you imagine the pushback to that? So I think that there's...
Yeah, I can. But on the other hand, you're bound by the 12 principles. Tough luck, right? You want to be regulated. That's what your compliance department, which is effectively what they are, say they need. If you work in a hedge fund, yeah, you just click the button, off they go, they get it.
Yeah.
That's part of being employed. Sorry, you're regulated. Got no choice. Now, whether that's popular or not, because again, that network is sat there going, let's say that we've got 100 ARs and we've got 5 members of compliance staff. So each member of compliance staff is looking after potentially 20 businesses, of which they don't really know. They've got no insight to, they've got a contract with, they don't know what business they're running, what meetings they're attending, whether they're saying the wrong thing in the culture bits and pieces of the FCA on WhatsApp, which they shouldn't be using, and they don't disclaim the thing with the right. And all of a sudden they're like, nope, enough. because we're going to have our business taken away from us. So to come to us, you're going to have to give us open banking. You can see how the game ends up there quite easily.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a case. Too much at once will break it, and I think it's the case of the boiled frog. To incrementally turning up to get to that particular point, but it's there does need to be in-depth due diligence and oversight of business operations and what your ARs and advisors are doing. A lot of this is, again, we live in a very tech-heavy society, but tech will do a lot of heavy lifting for that. And this is important because on that, the oversight, you need to follow this process, you need to put this information in here, and you can just see that. And I think what any principal needs to, I'm hoping I'm backing this into a cul-de-sac here, but what any principal needs from that is to be audit ready immediately. Not, oh, good, we've got an audit coming. You need to get these things together. It's like, there you go. We need this. Done. It's there. Thank you very much. And this is what tech, the integration between whatever tech stack you're using, what you're using for cash flow modeling, what you're using for mortgage research, whatever it is, it's got to be there integrated so the principal can see it and think, saying, what's this guy up to? And you can go in and see how many people he's seen, how many first meetings he's seen, what is he doing, what investment advice is he giving, what mortgage advice is he giving, and just see that instantaneously without having to say, we need to do a report. And this is where the advisor has a responsibility to follow the process that is set by the principal. This document needs to be here on this day, this need, etc. So it's the partnership, but I really don't hope it goes to the level that you was suggesting it possibly.
Oh no, I could see logically why they ask for it. I think it's an overreach, but you can see how they put all the steps together to get give us all your information. So what we do in our business is we collect across a network. We analyze all of their communications data. So their phone calls, their WhatsApps, their emails, their Slacks, their Teams, and look for suspicious activity, mis-selling, bad culture, all of that sort of stuff. And actually one of our most popular things for managing that is the inbound call ladder. So obviously you need to have a matching, let's face it, you need a reverse inquiry to be absolutely safe. But you're not really allowed to spam out products. You get your product beginning of the week, send it out to everybody, see who bites, negotiate. That's wrong. You're not allowed to do that. Everybody does. So what we did was we put together for the sales director, who was a bit of a technical dinosaur, a graph that basically showed the zigzags of communication. So the salesperson or the AR would send out the offer. If they got engaged, an arrow would come back. And the sales manager would go, that's good, you're sending the offer to the right people, and we got a conversation.
Yeah.
If the salesperson was all arrows out and then a zigzag, they were obviously spamming all of their contacts to see. Now, simple to do with technology, but it gave the sales manager a complete overview of the behavior of the salespeople. He didn't need to read the emails to say, this is incorrect. He just knew from the pattern of behavior from the graph we put up there that the ARs weren't doing the right thing because they were just all outbound.
Yep.
So they got a bite.
And that shows, that illustrates the oversight and picking up those patterns and the flags in order to deal with it and potentially nip it in the bud before it becomes an issue. I think and we got, like I said, I've been in the industry a long time with the paper fight fine back in the Loutro days and all that business, and you can name all these different regulators that we've had throughout there and what you needed to do. But if you're trying to circumnavigate any processes or compliance or whatever the regulators say, you end up causing yourself more stress. And I've seen this with advisors that I've worked with, more stress, and they go, I've always done it this way and it's a shortcut and so on. If you just follow the process, the life is far easier. And if you've got nothing to hide, it's fine. And everyone is happier. And the vast majority of advisors that certainly I speak to are client-centric, ethical, with good values, and long may that be.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, and you say, and you might, the human nature, sometimes we are reluctant to change, but as I said earlier, change is a constant, and particularly technology is constantly changing. And you and I had a conversation about AI and what that could do, and how's that looking, and is the robo advice and so on coming down the track, and what can be done. AI is a useful tool if it's used in the right way, but again, it's got to be. You can't just say, "Oh, well, it was AI that told me to do that." I'm sorry, under SMCR, the senior managers regime. No, you can't blame it on that. But it's that, as you said, it's flagging patterns. Understand the principal shouldering that cost, or the network shouldering that cost, and the advisor understanding. And if there's a value there, but if they don't see the value, they may well go for the cheaper option. And if the cheaper option is what they want, as I said earlier, cheap is not necessarily the best. And how much do you value your business? But there is a happy medium. There's a happy medium somewhere along that line. Keep coming back to the same point, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think the FCA are trying to raise the bar. So the lowest cost operators, I know of several that they've gone into and said, listen, you don't have the compliance capacity for all of the firms that you have on your platform. Please get rid of 2/3 of them. Wow. So 2/3 of the firm on the platform gone, because the host didn't have the compliance capacity in the FCA's requirement. Now, if that's your business and you're happily off there selling stuff, and you get a letter saying, sorry, in a month you need to be off our platform, go find another one. Wow. Because how do you as an advisor then go to your clients and say, sorry, I'm out of business for 6 months till I find another home?
But this is under what I would say to a network is have those scenario testing and impact tolerance mapping, so you know if there's what's the maximum tolerable level of disruption that any part of the business can take, and have and be mature enough to self-regulate to a certain extent. Okay, we've got a risk here, and then move with that. And again, with tech and the monitoring of throughput, as you described earlier, with your zigzags and increment, you can see where these things are. But again, it's a big investment for principals and to have that level. But it's
so here's the thing: if your business revolves around grazing 500 to 1,000 pounds off 150 clients a month, spending 30 or 40 grand of that 150 on some platforms that mean you carry on collecting that money seems to me to be sensible business.
Yes, longevity of the business is looking down the track, and I think that is the ultimate thing. Is we go back to the same point, is understanding what the responsibilities are and what the cost implications are for that. I mean, what you said there about what the FCA are looking at. There was a video I watched recently about the 5-year strategy, what they were, and again, it's just back to basics. It's the same. And they talk about the four main principles of that. We're going to be a smarter regulator. We're going to be streamlined authorization.
Oh, please don't say AI. Please don't say AI.
No, sir.
We're going to use more AI. No, don't. Really?
Well, you see, AI is with us whether we like it or not, but it's just got to be used in the right context. And you and I had this conversation about before, and you imagined that some consumer can you tell me which is the best pension to put my money
Oh,
in?
don't. There was
But
somebody
people,
put up, just imagine a world where your competitor has got a WhatsApp connected to ChatGPT so they can instantly respond to a request from a client for a mortgage product. I was thinking, oh my God. And on
yeah,
LinkedIn, literally, this guy has got IFA after IFA going, I'd love to be part to learn how to do this. And I'm
yeah,
thinking,
yeah.
not one of you has read past principle 4. You haven't even read past principle 1. Because
Yeah,
principle 2
yeah.
and 3 stop you from doing that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This running, but this is the thing: is when there's anything like this, people do run away with it and they test it, and this is you got to be brought back to reality. And that's AI is going to continue to be with us, but it's got to be monitored and used in the right way. But from the regulator perspective, I mean, can you imagine that AI regulation? But God help us. But I hope not. But you talked about the 4 principles that they're going to introduce for 4 years, but the same thing again. It's the same. It comes back to this helping consumers, fighting financial crime,
Yeah.
support economic growth. And what we're seeing now with I mean, this is more, I'm not going political, but from the stance, what transpired this week is taking more risk. He said we need to do measured risk, and you're like, oh, what we're talking about here? But that may well be a.
It strikes me as a very good thing to say, right up until your gran is sold a 10-year term product in her 90s when she's in a care home and it's based on crypto. And you're thinking, this is going to happen if we carry on going this way, because AI will make the decision and go, yeah, that's fine, because the regulators replace themselves with ChatGPT. And bad things will happen. And everybody will go, why did we ever loosen those relationships to allow people to do that? And it's cyclical to your pendulum thing. I think we've got quite dangerous we're over-regulated. I don't think we are. If you think about what a standard CF30 can do, an IFA can do in terms of the advice chain, mortgages, pensions, credit, loans, options, the stock market, bonds, funeral planning, land deals, all of this stuff, they can give you advice on. It just blows my mind that one allows all of that. And they're saying we should loosen the regulations on that.
Well, I mean, with good business models, they do have specialists within that. I mean, it's good to have a holistic practice, and they have specialisms within that, and that's in its.
Thank goodness for paraplanners, eh? Never thought I'd say that, but yeah, thank goodness for paraplanners.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I find about networks, which is interesting, is because they are profit driven, when they do see the ability to make the money easily, it's a very difficult thing when you're a for-profit regulator not to grab that. And it normally comes from a really big organization using you to get something out the door. So if you're a big American bank, want to launch a product in the UK, you go through a regulatory host because it's easier. If you're a large life and pensions provider and you want to get rid of some toxic debt off the balance sheet, you create a structured product and you put it through the advisor networks, right? So all of these bits and pieces is often where the networks are sitting with a massive, great balance sheet trying to get rid of risk and a whole load of tiny balance sheets off there selling it, and they get caught in the middle. So if we look into the credit market, you've got some very, very small networks with very, very small balance sheets offering credit for some enormous businesses. And the way the regulation works, it's the network that wears any mis-selling. So imagine you are a massive car dealership and you're offering car finance and it's mis-sold. Who'd have thought that was a thing? And you're the network that's dealing with it. All of a sudden, it's your risk.
Yeah.
So all of those tiny garages that have been using 2 or 3 really enormous balance sheets of investment
Yeah.
banks and loan companies, it's not the investment banks and loan companies that are in trouble. It's the network that was regulating all of the garages.
In that instance, the my understanding of this is that of that particular instance is the dealership that's going to the bank saying, can we earn some more money out of that? Can you increase the APR a little bit, and so we can get some more commission? And that's
so there were the larger chains are all directly regulated. A lot of the corner garages, the lots that just offer you car finance from wherever else, are actually ARs. And so there's a network intermediary in between
in the middle,
the garage and the finance company, even though it's badged as the finance company and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
There's a network in the middle. It's the network that's regulated.
Yeah.
The first regulated entity in the chain. So therefore, its balance sheet is tiny compared to the loan originator, but they're the ones responsible in the chain of things.
Yeah, and that is an area that I'm not particularly familiar with. That's outside the people that I generally speak to. But if you're talking about let's say a wealth and pensions network, they've either got external, heavily researched. They're creating a centralized investment proposition to say, okay, we've looked at the whole of market. This is what we're comfortable with. You can go whole of market, but let's just make sure we want to be comfortable with it before you do. Or you've got the vertical models that have got a commercial interest in delivery advice, platform, and funds, and so on. So there's some nuances that we talk about there, but in that you would hope. If you do your due diligence and you look at these things, that research is done into creditors, to fund providers and platforms, etc.
And actually, that's a slightly different area of regulated activity because they're products from the get-go that are targeted at individuals. There isn't a big pool of stuff that you're just peeling bits off.
Yeah.
So I think the mortgage and investments marketplace, given the way that you have DFMs and individual mortgage products, as long as you've matched the appropriateness and haven't used an aggressive sales approach and you haven't sworn or used a racial epithet in your sales process, you're probably going to get away with whatever you've advised. But woe betide you if you've broken DEI or anything like that as part of the cultural approach of the FCA that they monitor for now.
Yeah.
Which is, a whole other area of regulatory overreach that strikes me as being, just another thing really, isn't it?
Well, you see, you talk about the regulatory overreach, but networks haven't had a good time. I mean, some would argue quite right, because you think about the consumer duty, there's an awful lot of expense and work gone into that. ESG, you've got the AR regime, and like I said, constant change. So, but it's constantly invested, and hopefully seeing these things, as I said, I keep using the same analogy, coming down the track and just getting ready for it. And this is the whole principle, as I say, is just be audit ready, know what's going on, and that's the key element to it. Is you don't have to go searching and doing. You can just go and look and pull that information. But the top and bottom of it, and I don't think I've said this already, is that the network, ultimately, the network is a service provider for the advisor, for their consumers. They are a service provider providing a service for the. I can see.
They're regulated. So actually, it's on its head. The network is the only regulated person in that entire thing, right? So the FCA regulate the network. Nobody else is regulated, right? So the advisor actually is irrelevant in the process because they're not regulated.
This is why they're
standing.
Some the risk appetite within some networks, if there's anything that's not slightly out of kilter, they just chop. There you go, terminated. Away you go.
Yeah.
And again, sometimes it's a little bit overzealous. You just need to look at the situation.
I agree, but to go back to the fact that unless they take that approach, the entire business is at risk. So it's actually in the rules, in the setting out of the new AR regime, that they should cut them off first and ask questions second.
Yeah, you said that.
That's the rules. They have to behave that way because they can't afford, the FCA can't afford for a for-profit regulator, which is a network or a principal, to allow the profit motive to overtake the regulatory motive, which is where I disagree with you on the fact that networks are service providers. They're not. They're the regulated part of the market. The consumer is actually dealing with the network, not the AR. The AR is kind of irrelevant to it because they have no regulatory standing without the network.
But how networks position themselves in the marketplace is a service provider.
Yeah, of course. Which is why the FCA is so worried about it, because they're going, you're not a service provider, you're a regulatory
host. But they do add value in what they do offer.
Any of that stuff, but I think this is why the FCA is looking at this area and going, you really are not a service provider. You needs to be a regulated entity with all the responsibilities in the handbooks. Act like it, because you're beginning to turn into a service provider where people pay you money for access to the markets. I don't think I would like to be an SMF 16. To be fair, no, dreadful job. In a network, it must be the worst job in the world, because
you shouldn't say that, because there'll be loads of SMF 16s running. Oh, why?
They literally don't know where the next fire is coming from, because they don't do a good enough job yet of controlling their networks. They don't look through their emails. They don't look through their data. They don't look through their outbound marketing. They don't listen to their calls, because they just don't. They're not aware it's even available. Most of the time I go and talk to people and they go, "Oh, can you record WhatsApps?" Yes. Can you record phone calls? Yes. Oh, we have to do that, but we didn't. We thought it was impossible. We can't do it. Well, you can and you should. Does it cost money? Yes. Oh, well, no, then we're not going to do it.
Yeah, and there would be pushback from the. I'm bound to your superior knowledge on that, because I've not read SUP in the way that you've to the depth that you've probably read it. But it's I do think that, again, trying to be balanced on this, there is a happy medium somewhere along the line with this, and that's and it has to be the networks have a very strong purpose within the marketplace, and I hope they do continue to be around, but in the right way that protects the advisors and their businesses and the consumer clients. Because there's the very few people that I come across that say, "Do you know what? I'm going to do a bad job today, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that." Yeah. The 99.9% saying, "I just want to do right by my client, do the right job, give them something that's fair value, and I want something that's fair value from my principal." And that's where I sit. That's what I would like. I try and achieve for anybody that I speak to, is say, this is both the network. I speak to networks about helping them with the propositions or benchmarking. Is probably a more accurate turn of phrase. But the from an advisory perspective, it's just that there are many options to look at, but it's just choosing the right one to suit your requirements, where you feel safe, given what you've just articulated.
And Paul, we're coming up on time, so where do you see the market going in the next year or so? What are the things that people should look out for?
Well, there's always the consultation papers that are coming down the track, and the discussion papers. The next one is the mortgage rule review, about just revisiting the MMR from previously. But do you know what? If I could call whatever's going to happen down the line, I think it would be a very wealthy man. But it's just look out for your business. Look at your longer term. Don't be afraid to walk away from something if you're not happy with the contract. But just make sure you do your due diligence in looking for what route you're going to go down, and be true to the business and your goals and your values.
Perfect. Paul, thank you very much for your time today. It's been
Thank you.
a delight to run through the pressures that these poor people feel as they start on their regulated journey. That's it's been a really nice chat.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and see you all on the next compliance catch up.
Thank you.